everybody. This is Kevin Singer from Neighborly Faith. I'm joined again by Khalid, who is just an immeasurably valuable resource for our organization as we do our work promoting friendship and connection and relationship between Christians and Muslims on college campuses, which I'm sure Khalid would agree is some of the most exciting work out there. I think a lot of times, we come to college, we expect to connect if we're a Muslim with Muslims, if we're a Christian with Christians, but there's so much exciting experiences to be had if we cross over and we engage some of those relationships. But for the Christians out there watching this video, whether you're in Cru or some other campus ministry, you might be wondering, how do I get a hold with the MSA on campus, the Muslim Student Association? Khalid is a leader among MSA students in California, Southern California, and I'll give him another chance to introduce himself for those who are just jumping into this video in the series. But Khalid's a good friend of ours who we met this past year at a Cru conference. And we had a chance to hang out with Khalid and some of the MSA leaders there in Southern California and go to a mosque with them and have some dialogue. And it was clear that Khalid is that, as we say in Christianity, person of peace who has a lot of enthusiasm about this work. And I've just been so blessed to get to know him. So Khalid, why don't you maybe say a little bit about yourself before we jump into the questions for this episode?
Well, first off, Kevin, every introduction you give just gets nicer and nicer. Video. So
here.
Honestly, thank you. You're such a kind person. So hi everyone. As Kevin said, I'm Khalid. I am the founder of the Muslim Student Association at Orange Coast College. I was the president for roughly two and a half years since our founding. And I'm happy to say that our MSA has grown, although it's in a community college. And like Kevin said, the event with CRU was actually our largest event yet. It was over 100 people, I'd say, who were there. And, we made it work. We gave them a tour of one of the largest mosques in North America, the Islamic Society of North America. And honestly, I'm really happy to work with CRU or Cru. Is that what you call it?
Cru, yep.
Cru, yeah. I'm very, very happy to work with Cru. They've been amazing, and I hope I work with them for a long time. So
yeah,
let's do it.
Yes. And I will say this. I think the perspective you bring, Khalid, which is so great, is like there's something really unique when Christians and Muslims decide we're going to talk to each other. And I think we both, even through the event that you mentioned, we saw, oh, wow, like this. And it's not just superficial, right? It's like sometimes you walk away and you're like, I still don't understand. And that's okay, right? Like there's something about this work though, and frankly it's human work too. Seeing the humanity in one another while also recognizing differences. Obviously, it's something we both cherish our faith. We both are strong believers, very convicted about the things we believe, but that does not stand. That actually enhances, I think, our friendship. So
absolutely,
hopefully we give as many Christian college students the opportunity to be a part of this kind of work. And so with that being said, sometimes what stands in the way of this work is the really just practical and logistical stuff where I mean, sometimes you have the courage to make a call or send an email, but then you're like, okay, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to overwhelm people. Maybe they're afraid of me. And so that's where this episode is going, is how do I connect with Muslim Student Association on campus? And so with that being said, let's start really simple. What is actually the best way to get a hold of an MSA? Is it sending an email? Is it sending a message on Facebook or Instagram? I noticed a lot of MSAs have an Instagram presence, perhaps even more than Cru does. It seems like Instagram in particular and Facebook are where a lot of the dialogue is happening about events and things like that. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's showing up at an MSA event and saying, hi, I'm, Jeremy from Cru, and I'm not really sure what to do. What advice would you give to Christian student leaders who want to engage with MSA on this front?
So obviously there are many different ways to contact an MSA, but the number one best way to contact an MSA is through Instagram. 110% it's Instagram. And if the MSA in your local area or on campus isn't responding from, a text or a message on Instagram, you can go and like some of their posts, comment on their posts. Say, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Or they post a flyer. So you comment on the post that talks about the flyer. Say, oh, this would be a cool event to go to, or you could even just be more straight up and be like, hey guys, I messaged you, but I got no reply. I'm just, sending another message for a follow-up. You could do that too. MSAs, we love it. Like we really, really like it when we see other religious organizations come to us and message us, because we're seen as a minority, and we feel like we're a minority a lot of times too, because although Islam is an Abrahamic faith, just like Christianity and Judaism, it's quite different in a lot of the cultural aspects, the attire, for example, the mannerisms, lots of stuff around Arabic, that sort of thing. So we feel like we're a little different. So when people from other faiths like to come to us, we get really, really excited. And if you have, and again, if you have trouble messaging an MSA, chances are it's not going to show up on their direct message feed. It's going to show up on their request feed. So it may take them a while. So, if they're not messaging you back, you just comment on their posts and they will get to you.
That's a fantastic piece of advice, and quite frankly, one that I'm going to take. So I am also a learner on these calls. Really, really, and I've noticed some of that too. Like Instagram is, and sometimes I go to like a crew Instagram, and sometimes it's really bare bones. Like they haven't posted since 2021, or the last post was 6 months ago. But I have yet to see an MSA page that is not really current. Now, should Christian students attempt to show up to an MSA event? I've personally, I'll just be candid, I've personally encouraged some students to go to an event if the event feels public, like if the event feels like an outreach. But again, I also caution, right, students, that if you go to one of their events, the president of MSA might be really distracted by all the different things they're expected to do at the event. Sure. So that's why I'm saying, like, would you encourage that? Would you caution against showing up at events? Talk to us about that.
So, like I said, we love it when people of other faiths come to our events, especially from faiths that we have a lot of similarities in. Like for crew, like Christians, for example, is we love to see, especially Christians. We love to see it when Christians come to our events.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that Christians will realize, and I've spoken to some Christians that will show up at some MSA events randomly, unannounced, and after the event, they feel like they've been so welcome. They feel like they're at home. They feel like they're like at the end of the event, they feel like they were sitting down with their family.
Yes.
We're very, very welcoming to
Agreed.
people of other faiths, especially, and please come to events unannounced. Maybe it's, even if it's like some super religious event that we're having, and we invite a speaker to talk about a certain subject on theology, for example, still show up, because we're going to treat you so well. We're going to treat you like a king or queen. And the honest to God, that's how MSAs are. We're very, very welcoming. And it's okay. We will, like, don't get me wrong. We're not going to be 100% welcoming and like agree with everything you have to say.
Right.
100% honest there. Well, we're going to sort of stand our ground with our beliefs, but at the same time, you are our guest, and we need to treat you as best as we can. And you're going to really feel that when you show up to MSA events, even unannounced.
Yeah. And I was going to say this too. It's funny. I don't know where this comes from, and maybe you have a theory, but when I talk to a lot of Christian students, they tend to look at coming to an MSA event through one lens, and it's, what if I do something rude? That is the number one lens, if not the exclusive lens they think about. But what's funny is, when I ask them, well, if a Muslim came to your event, would that be how you thought about them? Is, wow, that Muslim has no idea how to be in this space. How rude. And they're like, no, I would never think that. And I'm like, so it's interesting that we kind of project that onto minority religious groups. Like, well, I'm going to show up and they're going to think that is the most rude human being. Oh, and they're a Christian, even worse, right? Like, but what I found is Muslims do not think of Christians in that way, or frankly, anyone that I've seen. It's not like someone walks in and they go, okay, how rude are they going to be? Like, that's not at all the framing. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where that comes from. And, part of it, frankly, is just wanting to do things that are respectful, and that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But MSAs truly have a certain level of hospitality that they hold themselves accountable to. And
Thank
so
you.
I couldn't agree more. My experience has been very similar, and I have yet to have a Christian student who visited an MSA event and not come to me and say, "Wow, that was amazing! I can't wait to get something started." It's
Wow.
usually the response.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. So, I mean, no, like you're not gonna really offend anyone. I mean, obviously, unless you do something like say something blasphemic, like I don't know, God doesn't exist or something. But like you're Christian, you're not gonna say something like that.
yeah,
So, um, but no, like, and even if you do something that is, what's the correct word? Maybe uncustomary, we'll understand, because you're not Muslim, but it really is, it's okay, it's okay to feel, I don't want to say alienated, but it's okay to feel like you're different, and to show up in a gathering and not want to do anything rude. To us, it actually shows that you're very considerate.
yeah,
And there are lots of moments, like for example, when the crew folk, you guys came to the mosque, everyone was so respectful. They're like, oh, like, where should I put my shoes? Should I like wear something for my hair? When I go inside the mosque, Khalid, like, what should I do? I don't want to be rude. Like, when we Muslims hear that, MSAs, but when Muslims especially hear that from other people, we're like, wow, this is really all we ask for. We just ask to be treated as human beings,
yes,
and to know that we have customs too, and to acknowledge them. And when someone comes to us and be like, I don't want to be rude, that's more than what we ask for.
mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah,
And so, like, please, like, don't be scared, don't be nervous to come to an MSA event. Obviously, you'll have some sort of nervousness because it's different for you, but don't be worried about doing something rude.
yeah.
Because as long as you're respectful, which 100% the Christian faith promotes respect and love and dignity to other people, you'll be fine. You'll be more than fine.
Now, one thing I've noticed with MSA is they take officer elections pretty seriously. So, uh, and typically it's a pretty dynamic process, right? Like, it's a big deal when a new president or vice president or secretary or treasurer or outreach coordinator is another pretty common role I've seen. Maybe a Christian group might feel like, well, if they're going through elections, like, maybe we keep our distance, we let them kind of carry out their process. And I've noticed too, like, sometimes MSAs will say, "Oh, I'm sorry it took us so long to get back to you. We were turning over in our leadership." What advice might you have for Christian groups who maybe notice that there's an election season coming on, or maybe don't realize that there's an election season coming on for the change in president or vice president? What advice would you give for that season?
Well, two things. First is what I reiterated in the beginning. You firstly start off with Instagram, and you really target Instagram. Second thing is the timing. If you're messaging an MSA closer to the end of the spring semester or in the beginning of the fall semester, those are the two times. And in between that time, if the MSA does something in the summer, which won't really happen that often, but that entire window, if you will, is where the new board is transitioning. It's at the end of spring. It's the end of the previous board's term, and in the beginning of the fall, it's the new board's term. Some board members will be staying in the new board and having a new term. Others will be leaving. So same thing. You message on Instagram, or you can show up to events. You can email, although email we don't really we don't really look at our emails that much, or when we do, we will reply a little bit later. I think other people, I think other people deal with this too. It's not
Yeah.
just a Muslim thing.
Oh no,
But
I'm glad you said something because I haven't had a lot of luck with email and MSA. So that's that's good. I'm glad you're saying something.
yeah,
Yeah.
so no, because I'm really laughing because we had this when you were planning for the crew.
Yeah.
That like
Yeah.
you messaged us by email, so I
Yeah.
remember that it
Yeah.
took a
I
while
might
just
as
to
well
get
have sent
back
an
to you.
email into space. No, you're actually really good with email, but no, that's good. So it sounds like what you're saying is those election seasons,
Yeah, so
really
that's when
fall
the
late
election
spring.
season. That's when the election season is. So you can still message, still message them. Same thing. If they're not replying right away, you can go down to the comments with their latest post, comment and be like, "Hey guys, we're crew. We messaged you guys. Um, just reply back." And chances are they'll reply back very quickly after you comment something on their post, even if it's a new board.
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right, so just keep that in mind. But again, Instagram, and you don't really have to worry about it that much because usually larger MSAs will have really good marketing teams,
Mhm.
so they will get back to you at an adequate time, even if it's a new board.
Now, how far in advance would an MSA be comfortable planning out an event with a Christian group? So I can speak personally from experience that I've talked to MSAs who are like, let's do something in a month. I've talked to other MSAs that are like, we'll have to look ahead to next spring. And maybe there's some variability here, but have you seen any like sort of themes in terms of how far out MSAs like to plan things?
Well, usually for big events and interfaith dialogues or interfaith events will usually be bigger events, so they require more planning.
Mhm.
Something for that would be at least a month.
Okay.
At least a month. Um, Maybe he could try to pull something off in 3 weeks ish, maybe, if both crew boards and MSA boards know each other really well, like they're really good friends, they're part of the same friend group, then maybe you could pull something like that off. But usually for a large event with a different organization, and I bet crew boards will know this just as well, is that you'll need to do a lot more planning.
Mhm.
The next thing you should look for is you should see how many events the MSA does in a year. And is it a large MSA? Do they have a lot of funding? When was the MSA founded? How many years ago? Like, what are they a very large, strong community? And so, the stronger the MSA is, the more planning that's going to be required, because usually these MSAs hold very large, lavish events. There's an MSA or MSU, actually, Muslim Student Union in Southern California, that holds these large, really, really big and successful fundraisers in which they fundraise hundreds of thousands of dollars, for example. And that's just an MSA
Mhm.
or MSU, So MSAs can be very large. So larger MSAs will require more planning, but smaller MSAs, like I said, maybe you could pull it off in 3 weeks, but just to be safe, at least a month.
Now, one thing I've noticed is Christians tend to pay a lot more attention to Muslims around Ramadan because that's when there's a lot more programs and exposure and like attempts or rather efforts to provide additional literacy on Islam and Muslims in the typical calendar, not unlike how around Passover there's more exposure to Jewish students.
Yeah.
But I've also noticed that presents a bit of a conundrum for Muslim students because they also don't, so far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, they also don't want to go on hyperdrive during Ramadan because they're fasting. And
And they
so
get tired. Yeah. Yeah.
that can be a very exhausting experience. And so for Christian groups that are like, well, let's do something at Ramadan because that's when we think of Muslims. Would you caution against that and say, I understand that, Ramadan's a big deal. I mean, are Muslim groups trying to do more during Ramadan? Are they specifically looking for interfaith opportunities around Ramadan? Should Christian groups back off? Like, what's the most considerate thing in that regard?
So from experience, and I've been doing this for a while, not just the 3 years, starting the MSA at OCC. Um, I'd really say that if you want to do events with MSAs, refrain from doing it in Ramadan. You can bring people to our events because we'll have events mainly for Muslims, or maybe we'll have iftar events, which we break our fast at sunset. We'll have like little outings and stuff, and you can absolutely 100% tag along with us. But to plan legitimate interfaith dialogues, I'd refrain from doing that.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
good.
but maybe if you want to do an interfaith dialogue on the different ways a Christian will fast, for example, or if how a Muslim fasts, how different traditions fast, you could definitely do something like that before Ramadan.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you want to talk about
Yeah.
um, other prophets or anything, because usually Muslims will have a very strong sense of faith after Ramadan. It's like because Ramadan will be sort of like a 30-day spiritual detox for
Yeah.
Muslims. If you want to do any event with Muslims after Ramadan, you can, but just not during Ramadan. I'd refrain from that.
Now, would it be, this wasn't part of our questions, but I'm just curious. What if a Christian group said, we want to provide that meal, that fast breaking meal? Like we want to pay for that meal. I mean, go to a halal restaurant and order the food. And is that something that Muslims might find problematic? Like, why are Christians buying us food for our fast breaking? Or would that potentially be an opportunity to show generosity?
Not at all. We won't have a problem with that. At least,
Yeah.
from my views and understanding, Muslims will not have a problem with that. But you just got to make sure that, as you said, the food will have to be from a halal restaurant, or the
Right.
meat will have to be halal certified.
Right. Yep. And typically, like a Mediterranean restaurant
Mhm.
could be, but it's always good to call ahead and find out, is this halal certified?
Yeah.
And
Persian restaurants too. There are lots of Persian,
yes. Yeah.
and they'll like mostly be halal certified, but you can, just always double check.
And in closing, this is our last question. Some campuses have a Muslim chaplain.
Mhm.
I've noticed the Ivy Leagues, some campuses in California, for
Mhm.
example, becoming increasingly popular to have like a part-time Muslim chaplain, or a maybe a contracted Muslim chaplain who lives in the local community who can speak to Muslim issues and affairs on campus.
Mhm.
What role might they play? Is that the front door? Is that where Christian students should knock first? Or yeah, talk to me about maybe some dynamics you've seen around Muslim chaplains and what sort of engagement there should be there.
So it's quite interesting you ask, because uh, lots of Muslims recently have been talking to their chaplains about having interfaith dialogues.
Mm.
Most chaplains will say, "Yeah, of course," and they're more open to it now. But if you really want to start contacting an MSA, again, you go to their marketing team, you go to their Instagram. After you get to know the MSA a little bit and give them some time so that the board speaks to their chaplain, then you can talk to their chaplain.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're more of like the really well versed person in Islam, then sure, you could go to the chaplain. But I think the best way to really plan out an event is to just talk to the board first,
Talk to
because
this.
because an MSA board, they're the group that really takes care of the planning. The chaplain pretty much just makes sure everything that they're doing, that they're planning, is according to Islamic jurisprudence and law and that sort of thing.
Khalid, is there anything else you'd like to add before we adjourn this video?
Most important thing is to know that Muslims are your brothers and sisters, truly, and likewise, you Christians are our brothers and sisters, and we really, especially in the U.S. and in the West, because there's so much intermingling with Muslims and Christians, we really see each other as family and as allies in faith, and I said this in previous video, I think, but in an ever increasingly atheistic and secular world, Muslims and Christians really need to unite get to know each other, get to work together for the common good. The Quran tells Muslims many times to go join organizations, go do things for the benefit of humanity, regardless of what religion, creed this organization is. We need to help each other and unite for the common good and for faith.
Agreed. Faith is the anchor for all of our lives, and
So,
the seeking of the divine.
so that being said,
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
right. So that being said, us Muslims and Christians needing to, be together more, interfaith dialogues are a must. And Muslims will love it when you reach out to them saying that you want to talk about faith. Will really cherish the idea, and you will most probably be able to find a board that is very welcoming and very loving, and will be more than happy to plan events with you guys.
Well, thanks, Khalid, again. For those of you watching, this is an entire series of videos, and so feel free to check out all the other videos as well as everything we're doing at Neighborly Faith and neighborlyfaith.org. Also follow us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you next time.